Welcome to the Pioneers in Pixels audio podcast, hosted by Sanjay K Khetarpaal, CEO of Marketing Markers, a digital marketing agency. Here we have discussions with some of the leading attorneys. Disclaimer: the podcast is for educational purposes. Please reach out to attorneys for legal advice.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Sanjay K Khetarpaal. Today I have with me Lois Kahagi. She is a family and divorce attorney. Hello, Lois. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
Good
to be here.
Good. So this is such a meaty topic, and I don't think it's 20-40 minutes kind of thing. Time is good enough for us. But I just want you to touch a few things I want to ask, because it's about the customers, about the people who are trying to reach you, how they can reach you, what they should look for. Things like that can help them to take a right decision in their life or whatever circumstances going in. But before we go ahead, I just wanted to know a little bit more about you. What do you do? Why you do? What's your background? What's your story? Just tell me a little bit more about that, and we start from there.
Okay, so my name is Lois Kahagi. I am a family and divorce law attorney. I went to law school in New Jersey. I am originally from Kenya. Came to this country after my university education, and then I went to law school. Graduated in 2009, and right away began my law career by having a clerkship in Middlesex County for a family court judge. And then right after, I opened up my firm with three friends of mine, but we all subsequently moved into our own areas and have practiced divorce and family law in New Jersey ever since then.
So Lois, one question is, I know that I was reading through the website and everything. Why did you pick up family and divorce kind of a niche for you? I think you mentioned something about how you look at them. So I just want to hear from you.
Yeah. So divorce, it came to me when I went to law school. I thought I was going to do corporate law, because at the time, the law that I remember, there was this show on TV about corporate lawyers, and that really interested me. But then during my clinical practice in law school, I went to I did a special education clinic. And in that special education clinic, I had the opportunity to work directly with clients. I remember I was representing or helping this family who had some issues with obtaining a free appropriate education. And so that experience of working practically with a family had an impact on me. And then I also remember a professor of mine who said that I had this quality, an empathetic quality, and that would serve me well in family law. So then following, I had an opportunity to clerk for this family law attorney. And I said, well, I think that the signs are there. And so I found myself gravitating into this area of law. To me, it's very interesting. The problems are no one day is the same. And I enjoy that.
Yeah, it seems like you didn't pick it up. That area picked you up, really, in a way. That got dragged towards you. I mean, you were dragged towards it, really.
There you go. I heard my calling.
Yeah, exactly. So, see, the lot of these divorce cases, people coming in, there are a lot of misunderstandings about how the process is, when should I reach to the attorney, things like that. Would you shed some light on that, saying that on these particular areas, they're misunderstanding part of it, when somebody should try to reach out to you?
Yeah. So I think the one thing I can say about one of the biggest misconceptions and even be bold enough to say that is we think of divorce as it's the emotions. We are dealing with emotions in divorce. Right. And to some extent, yes, to some extent, but largely in court, the court is primarily concerned with the division of assets, the financial division of assets, what support is to be paid and to whom, and as far as the children, what is to be done with the children where there are children. But in family court, the issues are largely financial, not emotional. And I think that's the biggest misconception that people have when finding themselves in family court.
So how do you approach this nature of the divorce? Because the moment it goes to the court, they're all about financial assets and everything, but there is a huge amount of sensitive, emotional part of the whole process, and then kids get involved. It's a lot. I mean, it's primarily you are the first line. People do talk and all this. How do you handle that? What do you do? What's your approach?
And that's exactly it. It's you start to realize as an attorney and a counselor that you are the first, you're the bridge, the one that's making that connection and transitioning your client from understanding that the emotions have brought them to this point of where they cannot be together anymore as a couple. And now they're heading into court where it's all financial. And so I, as the attorney, have to be that bridge, that person that's understanding and being able to meet them where they are and walk them through to this place where they need to be, so that eventually the divorce can be done, and that the divorce can be done in a way that's expeditious. It is not financially devastating to families. It is not emotionally and mentally devastating to families, which is what would happen if there is not a clear understanding of the goals of the family court versus your own goals as a client.
So in that case, I was just thinking about that. What are the biggest challenges you feel like if somebody comes in and wanted to have a divorce? They're not even aware. They're going to ask for the world for this thing. There are a lot of challenges in there you might have faced in your career. So what are the kind of challenges when people come to you and say, listen, I want a divorce, but I want this, I want everything of that. I want 100% child support, blah, blah. They have like totally in a different direction, different world, right? So there is a lot to handle and bring them to realization that what we are talking about. So I just want to see what kind of clients, give some examples if possible, just to ground it, really saying that what happened really.
Yeah. So typically what happens is that a client comes, I get the phone call, and what we do is we schedule an appointment. And the reason we schedule appointments is that, one, the client readily understands that there's going to be some time set aside so that we can have an understanding. The attorney can get to know why this client has called a divorce attorney, right? So for the most part, this is a point where we get what we call the biographical information. How long have you been married? Where were you married? How many children do you have? What are your assets? And when I ask those questions, then I get to know what kind of a person I'm dealing with. I will get to know, is this a person who knows what their assets are? Is this a person who knows what their finances are? Is this a person, do they work? If they don't work, then why don't they work? Because that will already tell me what kind of a case I am looking at in terms of who I am dealing with. If I'm dealing with somebody who has stayed at home for the duration of the marriage, I know the procedure or posture of that case and how it's going to be. If it is somebody who has taken some time off to work and, to raise children, but has a career, then we know how we are going to deal with that. All this is the initial appointment with the attorney. One, it's a first time to orient yourself as what are you going to look at. When I find a client who, let's say, for example, there's somebody who's not aware of their finances, the other spouse manages the expense.
Yeah, that happens a lot, actually.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Manages the finances. So I will ask questions like, where is your bank account? Or where are your taxes? And how much does your spouse make? And when I hear I have no information, it is at that point, I, as the attorney, take my way of doing it is I tell them, okay, now it starts now that you will get the taxes, you will get the bank statements to the extent that, and you will get an understanding that is it somebody who's hiding the information or does not want you to know, or is it there, but you just haven't taken a look at it, right? It's different. So all that in that initial appointment, it's the appointment. I take that appointment to be that here is the reality check. This is what you're facing. And not every attorney is for every client, right? So there are clients who will maybe look at that and think that, well, I'm not ready for that now. I need to take some time out to think. But for me, I try to make that appointment as very critical as possible. Like this is the time that you're going to need to get information. I tell them, if you do one thing when you leave my office is that you're going to create a budget for your post after the divorce. Immediately, just start to figure out, where am I going to live? What are we going to do with this house? And especially if you're living in New Jersey, how difficult it is to have one income coming in, and now it's going to support two households. So already you're starting to think, how is this divorce going to impact me financially? Not emotional. By the time you're coming to see me, I want you to understand how this divorce is going to impact you financially.
Well, that is a very important point because as you rightly said, that generally one person in the family manages the finances and the other spouse have no clue what's going on. When they come to you, like if you ask them, like, did you invest anywhere? Did you, what kind of bank you are banking with? I have no clue because I was not doing that. So that is huge. And other thing which is, I think you kind of touched upon it, which I was thinking of checking on was like, see, there are a lot of couples coming in considering for separations. And when they think about that, they don't know what they should think about other than the separation part of it. But there's a lot of things they need to think about when they think about separations. So what do you think that when any of the couple, what are the considerations for separation a couple should think about while they're talking about the separations and all this stuff? It could be mutual, but it could be like a high conflict scenario, whatever the way might be, but they need to think about 10 things or 5 things. What do you think they should kind of have their area of focus? You mentioned a couple of those right now. It's like, hey, talk about your finances, but if you can elaborate a little bit more, that'll be helpful.
Yeah. So in terms of finances, so you're thinking about, let's say, for example, you have a home. So you have a marital home and you're thinking of separating. So are you going to sell the home, or are you going to buy the other person out? Can you afford to buy the other person out? So immediately you're thinking, if let's say this is a mutual amicable separation, you're already thinking about, all right, if I'm offering to buy you out, can I afford a mortgage? Do I have a pre-approval letter that shows you that, okay, this is how much the house has been appraised for. This is how much I can afford to, and this is how much I can anticipate that I would refinance it for. And why? So that the other person, when they are now understanding, okay, if the person is going to refinance, and I'm going to get this amount of money, how is this amount of money then going to help me move on to this next phase? Can I afford to live in this state, or do I have to move out? Now, when you're thinking about moving out of state, if you have children, everything else just has to take a back seat, because if the other party does not approve of you moving with the children, then you're stuck here. And that is really the reality of couples with children. it is really difficult to be able to move out of state when you have children. Because, yes, because when you think about it, these children are entitled to have both parents in their lives.
Yeah.
And just because a separation has happened, the parents are no longer living together. Then who gets depriving the children of the presence of both parents?
Makes sense.
So, right. So it becomes a really difficult consideration. And sometimes you have to have the tough decision to tell the parent that, look, you most likely are stuck here because you're most likely, and you may very well be trying to figure out how you're going to make things work with you staying here, even in the face of this separation. It gets very difficult.
So
yeah,
there are when you talk about children's and stuff. So how is this family law evolved in terms of non-traditional families? I mean, by non-traditional, I mean single parents, cohabiting, same-sex family, extended families, kind of things. How the family law has kind of evolved around this area, because these are a lot of things are coming in, and I think family law is evolving. But if you can shed some light on that too.
Oh, certainly. It really has evolved. One of the areas, speaking of children, one of the areas that family law has evolved is in the area of, previously we used to call this the tender years doctrine. And the tender years doctrine was that when children were of a younger age, then the mother the mother typically would be the one responsible for them. And so custody would primarily consider the age of the children, and if they were very young, then that it would follow that the mother would have primary custody of the children. That's no longer the case today. Today, both parents are looked at in co-equal status. So you will find one of the issues that, let's say, very young children who are maybe nursing or those kinds of things, and you have clients who are like, oh, my baby's too young, cannot have overnights with dad because he's still nursing, and so on. Well, that is not really an argument that's very powerful in courts today. Maybe you might be lucky enough to find a judge who's moved by that aspect, but for the most part, we know that children, you can prepare the food or whatever the child needs and the baby needs, and prepare the diaper bag and give it to the other parent, and life goes on. So that's one area. Another area was this understanding that only husbands pay alimony because they're the majority earners through the marriage. But more and more we are seeing that even wives are paying alimony. You will find some wives who come and say, oh, I can't believe I have to pay alimony to my husband, because that's not the way it should be. But no, it's the consideration is the different factors that have to do with who has the income, who has the ability to pay, and who has the need. And that is not limited to one gender. So you have certain changes like that have come up. Other changes are in the area of domestic violence and the recognition that most recently we have this recognition about coercion. Coercive control is what it's called, coercive control. So coercive control is this activity that takes place in a relationship. It is not what we call the physical abuse that we see, the verbal abuse that is clearly verbal abuse. It is this pattern of control, like we were talking about, that the person doesn't have access to financial information. Right. The person does not have something as small as the keys to the post office, the documents that have the important documents, the passports, the social security cards. One person is the one that only that person
manages
can
it,
do. Yeah, do the activities of the house in a way that is coercive. They're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to drive. All those now are considerations that a court may consider in finding that there is domestic violence in the relationship. So it's constantly evolving. You were talking about in same-sex relationships. We've seen the advent of civil unions and their consideration as right as valid unions, just as equivalent to marriages. So they enjoy just the same kind of protections and ability to have their assets all considered in the same, their assets considered in a divorce or in the dissolution of a civil union, just as in divorce.
Oh, okay.
Their ability to create families and adoptions and all those other aspects. It just tells you how this area of law has also evolved.
Interesting. And just to continue this a little bit, like not in a different direction, like going a little bit fast forward and saying that, what are the implications of not having a prenuptial agreement? Or do you think that prenuptial agreement is necessary? Or for whom it may be like, hey, at least you should get it. I mean, I don't think everybody gets it, but what are the implications of not having a prenuptial agreement?
No, well, the implications of not having a prenuptial agreement is that if you're talking about property that had you known better, you would have elected to keep it separate. Then without a prenuptial agreement, you don't enjoy those protections in a divorce. So what are we talking about? We're talking about, let's say, for example, you married later in life, you have accumulated some assets. And say, for example, you've worked and you have a retirement assets that you've accumulated over a long period of time, and then you get married maybe later on in life, and let's say 10 years on, you're getting a divorce. Essentially, you sort of, sometimes prenups, you can call them as hedges against right, in losing it all in divorce, or at least you're preserving some of that what was premarital. So, for example, we talk about in divorce, when people are getting divorced and there is a premarital component, we talk about the coverture period. And the coverture period is a period between the date of marriage and the date of the filing of the complaint for the divorce. And let's say you had accumulated some assets prior to that. The prenuptial agreement preserves those assets as separate assets, not to be considered in the divorce. But all that also depends on you not commingling them. Or we have the aspect of commingling, and we also have the aspect of transmutation, essentially moving assets that were previously separate and then making them into joint assets. So let's say, for example, one time I did have a client who he owned his home free and clear before he got divorced. Before he got married. And then after he got married, his spouse insisted that I need my name put into the deed of the house. Now, what ended up happening is that now that house, which was previously his own asset, became a joint asset because he put it in his in the joint names, and so that's what we call transmutation. And then so now that becomes a commingling of assets that were separate in the past, prior to the marriage, and then now those they come into play in a divorce, and so that and again, to be clear, it's not automatically a 50-50 division. There's still arguments to be made as to why it still wouldn't be, despite the fact that you put it in joint names. But a prenuptial saves you from having that debate or having that litigation, because it ought to protect you right off by keeping your separate assets separate. But there's no controlling for if you decide to move them from separate into joint.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. See, I was just looking into, like, sometimes, like, in these kind of things, the fair division of assets becomes like a challenging thing for the attorneys too. So how do you ensure that the fair division of assets or in the divorce proceeding? I mean, it's a big responsibility. I mean, it's like just you working yourself, or you have you bring in more experts also on that cases, or how does that work?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. You hit on a very great point because, and I know we haven't spoken about it, about the issue of why is divorce so expensive? But that's one of the things that divorce attorneys are just that. We have knowledge in the law. So, and we have knowledge in divorce law, but we don't have knowledge about tax implications of certain things that may come into play during a divorce. We don't have valuation of assets. So we're talking, if we are going to value a house, we are looking for appraisers. If we are going to value a business, we are looking for business forensic evaluators. If it's in or when we have an issue of custody, we are looking for custody experts so that we can figure out what's in the best interest of the children. Attorneys don't know and judges don't know. So those are the experts that come in. Primarily, it's financial experts and custody experts. Those are the ones that primarily get involved in divorce law.
Yeah, but I see that the financial advisors, the estate planners, real estate guys, appraisers, title, like all of these people will play in depending on what kind of assets you have so that you can have a fair division of assets. So that's
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And yes, and to your point, fair does not mean, talk about another misconception. Fair does not mean 50-50. Fair, yes, fair really means that there are certain considerations to be made to ensure fairness, because it wouldn't be fair that an asset that was previously paid off and now and was owned free and clear for 25 years, and then now for the last 10 years has been commingled, and then now to say that asset is now to be divided equally is not fair. So those are the considerations. Yeah.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
So fair, it does not mean 50-50. Fair means fair.
Yeah, fair means fair.
Fair is fair. So the other thing which I'm very, very interested in, knowing that the technology has changed a lot, especially around pandemic and like just before pandemic, and pandemic has actually technology has taken a decade leap. Everything is Zoom and all this stuff. So all of divorce being a very kind of assets and all division, and then emotional part of it is coming picture. How does that work? How is technology plays a role? Like Zoom meetings or Zoom stuff. Are you going Zoom, or does Zoom work for you? What if you go in front of the court, judges or Zoom? Well, how does it make a difference? Yeah. Because you don't see the body language, you don't see the emotions, you don't see nothing. It's very difficult to kind of figure out at times. I just want to see what your experience is on this one.
Right. So Zoom, the one thing I would say, Zoom has made things easy. And so from my standpoint, when I think about I want to meet a client, want to make an appointment, my initial appointment, I'm happy having a Zoom appointment because I know everyone is busy. Everyone is, and especially in these situations, you're working, you're probably taking care of children. So I'm okay with having an initial appointment as a Zoom appointment. And I want to have that initial appointment by Zoom because I want to see the person that I'm dealing with. To some extent, that's not a deal breaker for me. I'm happy to meet people where they want to be met. You want to meet in person, you want to meet via Zoom. Zoom, with respect to the court, has been very helpful because we are able to, let's say, triage or prioritize. These are the types of cases or case processes that we can do on Zoom. But these are the case processes we can't do on Zoom. Again, because, and what has happened with that is, one, with clients, we're able to use, because it's expensive, especially when you're being charged at an hourly rate, which is the typical way to charge. We charge in divorce cases. The travel time, the waiting time, because you're sitting down and you're waiting in court. it gets very costly for the client. But if we are there and we know we are there for a certain period of time for just this kind of court proceeding, it becomes to the client, it's better use of. Right. So then when it comes to trials and things of that nature in court, for the most part, judges, you're right. They want the person there. They want to be able to see the person, to see the body language, to see what they're looking at, what they're referring to, how they present themselves. That still is something that is still invaluable and still that courts need still continue to do. And it's not just helpful for clients, it's helpful for attorneys as well, because then the client gets to see, all right, what is my attorney doing for me?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting aspect. So technology is kind of changing the aspect of it, but yeah, there are still. So how does digital marketing plays a role for you? Meaning that, well, a lot of people are kind of not coming to you or not coming to you directly, and sometimes you need to approach them, or referral works a lot of the ways here. But is there a digital marketing playing a role to you? Most of the time, I think it's an education part of it for people to understand, like this program is about education. Same thing. I mean, how does that play the role for you?
So for me, it does play a role in that I do appreciate it. So when clients call my office, we normally will ask them, oh, how did you hear about us?
Okay.
And they talk about Google. I saw your website, saw you on Google. I saw your reviews. So that's as far as I have. But in trying to get trying to get more into digital marketing, I have asked my colleagues and other people who I see very much involved in digital marketing, and they really rave about it. And the one thing I know about digital marketing and marketing in general is that it still does pay to put a lot of information out there as to what what divorce is, what child custody is, what you're looking at. In that, a lot of information being out there, it is good for everyone. Because when the person is coming to me already knowledgeable about what the divorce is, what to expect, and they're looking for clarification, you find that that's a person that you're able to help even more, because they're coming with information already. The ones who, and so when you put more information out there and people come to see you knowing that you have all this information out there, I think there's a great benefit to it. And so I'm very appreciative of marketing in this way, and the way I see the way I see digital marketing in the divorce space, that it's more about giving information and having people more knowledgeable, because then the more knowledge you have, the better
decisions. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And the better off you're able to make even the decision to see an attorney is based on how much information I have about this attorney and what they do and how they do it.
I agree with you. Actually, that's another thing which happens. Like all your clients are actually a knowledgeable client because they have done some research of the materials you probably might have posted on the web and read your blogs and stuff to understand the process well, understand the divorce process well. And then when they reach out to you, your job becomes easier because you don't have to go from scratch and tell them because they're already knowledgeable. You just acknowledge that what they know and then start from a point, not start from scratch. So that helps a lot. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. This has been a great conversation with you, Lois. I appreciate your time today. Before we part, I just wanted to, people who are listening, give your details if somebody is interested in having a conversation with you. that would be helpful for them to just reach out and have some conversation with you. If you can give your phones and your emails and website, whatever, that would be helpful for anybody.
Oh, certainly, certainly. Thank you so much. So I'm Lois. So www.wlk-law.com is my website. My email is lois@wlk-law.com. My office is in Islin, New Jersey, and that's 33 Wood Avenue South, Suite 600, Islin, New Jersey, 08830. And my office number is 732-662-1080. And thank you so much, Sanjay. This was a great conversation to have.
No, I appreciate your coming out. Thank you so much, Lois.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Pioneers in Pixels. We hope the discussion was enlightening and informative, giving you a clearer insight into the complexities. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and never miss an episode. Join host Sanjay K Khetarpaal next time for more insights and interviews with leading legal experts. Until then, stay informed and empowered. This has been Pioneers in Pixels. Thank you for listening and have a great day.